Welcome to the Record Celtic podcast, Swanee. It's been a while. How are you?
Is last season finished? Is it a new season? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's happened. Yes, I'm good, Daniel. Thank you.
We're caught in between it. That fateful afternoon at Hampden, Celtic and Aberdeen, feels like 5 minutes ago, but here we are, preparing for a new campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest with you, the football world now just doesn't stop, does it? I mean, obviously the largely unsuccessful World Club thing that took place. I mean,
What do you think of that? Have you been watching it?
No.
No, I mean,
there's no point in me trying to pretend otherwise. But I mean, when does this? Listen, I know that the bigger leagues will come back a little bit later than what the teams in Scotland will, obviously, because of the time of the league start and when they enter European competition. But nonetheless, to see the likes of Chelsea basically still playing in their season last week,
I know.
I mean, it's just ludicrous.
Even Alistair Johnson last night for Canada, penalties against, I think it was Guatemala.
Yeah.
For Canada. I mean, you just got no rest because what will he get 10 days off or something?
No, and I think this is something that the Celtic medical team and the manager has been quite clever with at various points of the season. They have, one of the key aspects of building a strong squad was the inability to rotate. And I know supporters maybe sometimes last season can understand the logic of making so many changes in certain games. It's weeks like this is the reason why that happens.
Aye. Before we get stuck into too much, I want to get your take on this before we go any further, Swanee. Celtic's new third kit. Are you having that?
Kind of impressive drawing.
Does look like a 10-year-old's done it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's actually okay. I don't mind it. What about yourself? You having that?
I think that's horrendous.
I thought that was a loaded question.
No, look, I think without the orange trim, maybe. But nah, I think that's a mad one. That'll be confined to the history books of like awful Celtic kits. Sorry, Celtic and Adidas. Sorry, just my
marketing. Get some more off the shelves and change it again next year.
On the pitch, Swanee, the important thing that I thought we should maybe start on, Celtic, Greg Taylor, I think is an important one. It's not been announced, I don't think, officially that he's going to PAOK in Greece. But Celtic need a new left back. Kieran Tierney's returned, of course.
Yeah.
I kind of thought Greg Taylor would stay, to be honest. I thought in the end they would come to an agreement and he would stay. He's not, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of replacement on the horizon as of yet, anyway.
No, but listen, we've seen in the past that, Celtic can make moves later on, whether you agree with that or not, I'm not sure. The Kieran Tierney one, we've obviously known about for a long time, pretty much since the turn of the year, and then Brendan Rodgers confirmed it that night at Villa Park. That was in January, so that one's been in the pipeline for a while. We knew it was happening. There was obviously a discussion about a potential Celtic ability to maybe change and play three at the back. I know it's not something that Brendan Rodgers has ever done, and I can't recall ever happening, really. I mean, I know he had that system when he first came in where, Michael Lustig would play further forward on one side and Tierney would slot in. It was almost like a three and then the other way around. But Brendan Rodgers was always insistent it was never a back three at any point. But flexibility is always in football changes, and flexibility offers options. And there was I thought bringing Kieran Tierney in would offer an option to go 2-3 at the back, and maybe, on occasion, not all the time. Just now and again, if there's a certain game might require that. And Greg Taylor just seemed perfect to be the one that would play outside of Kieran Tierney if he played inside. And also, Kieran Tierney has shown himself playing for his international team that centre-back, I'm not even sure that as he goes on in his career, left-sided centre-back in a two might not be where he ends up.
No,
so, again, that opened the prospect of Greg Taylor staying. But I mean, it seems to be that ship has sailed. I think a lot of Celtics, I think there was a feeling amongst the Celtic supporters that if it was going to get done, it would have been done, probably by the end of the season. And the fact that it drifted beyond the final at Hampden and into the weeks of the international gatherings would have suggested that it was on his way. So, listen, Greg Taylor had his detractors. There's no doubt about that. Daniel, you know that yourself.
I never got that, honestly. I don't know what you think.
I it myself. For
I didn't understand.
What the guy cost, the services put in and what the guy cost. And the one thing I always heard levelled at him as well, he's not Champions League class. Well, how many Celtic players really
are
Champions League class? So he's playing a position where when you play at that elite level, you can be exposed in one-on-ones. There's midfield players in there and wingers who just have never been up to it for Celtic at Champions League level, but it doesn't tend to cost you goals. So Kieran Tierney's an obvious upgrade. You would have thought a fully fit Kieran Tierney would be I take it you would agree with that, Daniel. Yes,
of course, if he's fully fit, I still would maintain fully fit, fully firing. He's 27, Kieran Tierney. If he gets back to, as I say, fully fit, I think he's world class, Kieran Tierney. I really do. I think one of the best left backs in Europe, I guess. Same with Andy Robertson as well, but he's obviously a few years younger. But I just think it would have been perfect. Taylor, I know he's probably obviously not been convinced of this, but it could have been like almost like a job share. Because Tierney, we would imagine, isn't going to play.
Celtic should still be looking for that, Daniel. They should definitely still be looking for that, because it's a risk to ask any player to play 60 games a season. And Celtic have managed it really well on the other side. I mean, listen, every manager's dream is Anthony Ralston. You never a peep out of him. Every time you hear Brendan Rodgers speak, it's his work ethic. Every day he trains like it's his last day. So he's ready to go. And Celtic can bring him in after 10 games without seeing him. And certainly of course, there's a drop-off to Alistair Johnson. Alistair Johnson's top class, but it's not massively noticeable.
He's still solid. He's a solid replacement.
It's a solid replacement. And Celtic are going to need someone who, to use your phrase, is going to job share. I would have thought, anyway. Thought that's very, very important, because Celtic will know this. They won't want to take a chance on Kieran Tierney breaking. You don't want to take that chance.
And if you had Greg Taylor, if God forbid Kieran Tierney breaks down day one of pre-season, you've got Greg Taylor there.
I should add on this, Daniel, I do think that, yes, he's had the injury problems, Kieran, but a lot of it's a wee bit sometimes overblown, I think he has. When he's been given opportunities, he's played a lot of football. There's now been this sort of thing that's built up around Kieran Taylor that he's not going to be able to play 20 games this season. I mean, I reckon with a good pre-season under his belt and ready to go, Kieran Tierney will be playing 45, 50 games next year. Maybe not all of them from the start, but 45, 50 games easily, and that's as much as you can ask for these days.
Fingers crossed. In terms of incomings that have come into Celtic Park, Benjamin Nygren. Excited by him. I think he looks like he could be a very shrewd signing. Yeah,
I quite like the pathway, Daniel, in the sense that I like players who've been out and sort of tested the water elsewhere, and it doesn't always work out. He leaves. I think it was Belgium, Holland, before he eventually in Denmark. So he's had opportunities to go out, taste football in other areas, and sometimes it takes players time to find their feet. I mean, I think it's well known that Dyson Maeda had a stint in Europe at first and it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. He had to go back, rebuild himself up again to be ready to go the next time when he got his next opportunity. So Nicholas Kuhn moved around a lot, different from the youth setups and where he was. I think he was Ajax, Munich, Leipzig, the different places he was at. So, there's, although relatively young in age, although I'm always loath to call someone in their 20s young, but, that he's been around, he's seen other areas, he's seen other football, and the vibe seems to be that last year was the year he really found himself in terms of a football and where he plays. So, yeah, exciting, but of course, Daniel, this is obviously coming on to the question that I'm then going to pose to you. What does this mean for Nicholas Kuhn?
Exactly.
Does it mean anything for Nicholas Kuhn? Or does it not?
Well, on Nicholas Kuhn, he's obviously been linked. There's been rumours. I think it's RB Leipzig, even Newcastle have been credited with an interest. I think it was Como the other day. Look, this fee that's been thrown about from, it could be completely imaginary, but the fee that's been thrown about is like £15 million for Nicholas Kuhn. I've said this on Record Sports Hotline Live and other places. I think if Celtic got an offer of 15 million for Nicholas Kuhn, they should take that and run.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that, I've got to be honest. And it's that this has nothing to do with Nicholas Kuhn, and it's got nothing to do with what Nicholas Kuhn may go on to achieve in the future. And yes, there is an opportunity for him to stay, Celtic to get through the qualifiers, play in the Champions League again, have the type of impact he had last season and take that fee up again. But listen, Boredomville, here we go. Let's talk about the transfer strategy again, but it's superb. Celtic's transfer strategy and knowing when to sell is superb. It's what's kept them ahead of the pack in Scotland, because they turn players over when the right time comes. Now, normally it would be a longer stint than what Nicholas Kuhn has been here for. I think it's 18 months, is that correct?
I think you're right. I came in January, didn't you?
Yeah. So normally it would be a longer period to stay. It's usually 2.5 years before they move on. But if you can get 5 times the fee in 18 months,
exactly.
That's the model which Celtic have built their success on.
And I get,
I think you have to take it.
There'll be Celtic fans that will be listening to this and probably say, no, look, if that ex-player's going for 20 million, 25 million, I get that. For me, I just think Nicholas Kuhn, a wee bit too much last season, kind of disappeared a little bit. I mean, the Scottish Cup final.
I think there was excuses for that. I think he's probably been asked to play a lot more. I would guess this would be the first time in his career he would have played as many games at such a high level.
Aye, that's probably fair, actually.
You know, and I think mentally it maybe caught up with him after that start he had.
Aye.
And Daniel, Scottish Premiership premium, unfortunately. We've argued about this for years. That players, you don't get the full value for them, but unfortunately it's built in to the fact they play in the Scottish League, and we can argue about it as much as we want, and Celtic can argue about it as much as they want. That's it. It's how much more is it going to be? And Celtic have done fantastically to get the fees that they've got for guys like Matt O'Reilly and all of that. And listen, I've no doubt the way Celtic do things, they could get this to 20 million.
Aye, that's true.
They could, because they just have a brilliant knack for it. And whether it's make it, keep clubs bidding against each other in the background right up until the last minute, whatever way they do it, they manage to get a big fee. So it wouldn't surprise me if it went beyond a figure of 15 million, to be honest. And you've got to take that. You've got to take it. And by the way, I know Daniel will be fancy. Well, how on earth are the team going to grow in the Champions League? As if as soon as somebody does something, you then replace them. But I get that. In a dream scenario world for a Celtic fan, they sign another, they've got Nygren in, Kuhn will stay, they'll then be on our side. But the business world kind of doesn't work like that. But Celtic do have a few quid. That is the thing. That is the thing that you have to consider. But also, Celtic are shrewd, remarkably shrewd. And the fact of the matter is they're in the qualifiers. Celtic will bank for Champions League qualification while they're in qualifiers. You just don't do that. They're too smart for that. You don't do it. You just can't do it.
You can't do it, aye. Celtic will look at it and go, okay, Kuhn goes, whatever, but we've got Nygren, Sweden International, whatever it was, 1.8 million, 23 years old, played in Europe before. He comes in, for 1.8, Kuhn goes for, say, 15. That is the model. That's it. That's what they'll point
to. Listen, I'm as guilty of this as anybody, and I'm sure many people are. You often relate a player's talent to his fee.
Aye,
and that's natural. Of course, you're not going to get peak Lionel Messi for £2.5 million. I get that. I'm not dumb. But we just automatically look, if Benjamin Nygren cost £8 million, everybody would be happy, happy as Larry. But because it's like, project player, that can he be? I'm not sure that's the case. If you look at what guys in Maida cost, and you look at what Rio Hatate cost, and you look at what Matt O'Reilly cost, it doesn't necessarily need to be a massive drop-off just because the kids only cost 2 or 2.5 or whatever it is. So, but replacing Kuhn would be a big ask on the back of last season. There's absolutely no doubt about that for any player to come in and replace him, because Kuhn, on the whole, was sensational. And we always have recency bias. At the end of the season, it didn't really work out for him, and that's kind of what you remember. Forget that first 6-7 months of the season. It was absolutely dynamite.
21 goals, it was brilliant. Aye, that's fair. The other kind of part of the team where there might be an incoming for Celtic is in defence, Hayoto Inamura, left-sided centre-back who, by all accounts, is close to joining Celtic. I'm not surprised, Swanee, to see Brendan Rodgers want to strengthen his defence. I kind of feel a little bit bad, though, for Liam Scales. I know, Cameron Carter-Vickers is the main man in defence. He's the one that's shown he plays. It'll be him and one other. Austin Trusty obviously hasn't convinced. I thought Liam Scales really come on last season. I thought he really took it up to another level under Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah.
And if Inamura, we don't know what's going to happen, but if Inamura comes in and automatically gets that left centre-half spot, I'd feel a bit bad for Scales.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he came in and automatically got the spot, I have to be honest, and that's not with any wonderful knowledge of the kid's past. I actually think that there has been precedent in the past around in a situation of Austin Trustees. I'd mentioned 2 names to you. Kelvin Wilson would be one. I would go further back to Paul Elliott. There'll be a few people probably not like that. They're listening to that and maybe can't remember Paul Elliott. There'll be plenty of guys like me who do, but Paul Elliott started off, was not happening for Paul Elliott. Similar thing I suppose you could maybe argue for Mick McCarthy. Fact that, you know, it can take time for guys to settle in. And my point being, there were times last season when Austin Trusty looked the business, and there were times when he looked like his head just wasn't there.
Aye.
You know, night at Dens Park, and he was getting ragdolled by Dundee forwards. But other times he defended with his back to the wall. I was in Zagreb, and he was absolutely tremendous that night when Celtic got a clean sheet and a point away from home in the Champions League. Of course, the game in Bergamo.
I was going to say Atalanta. It was really good.
You know, there's a defender there, a top-class defender there. And maybe it's just getting to the pace of Celtic and the grueling and how you have to be switched on every week. Maybe some guys, it just takes a wee bit of time to get used to that. To get used to, you can't have one good game in every two. It needs to be every game. And you're going to have the odd one. Cameron Carter-Vickers is his odd dodgy game. I mean, you can count them in one hand, but he's had them. He's learned to, you know, bring the consistency to it, which he's always had since he came in the door. In fairness, Carter-Vickers are probably unfair to say he's learned it. He basically was brilliant for the minute he walked in the door. But not everybody can do that. So my view is, without having a real background knowledge of the new lad coming in, I would say probably Trusty would still be the top of the queue. Beside Carter-Vickers, with skills and the Japanese lad to back him up. But that's just my own thought. Brendan Rodgers might have seen enough in this kid to bring him in. It's been mixed for Celtic in the Japanese market, hasn't it? I mean, obviously we don't need to go over the successes, but you know, Yuki Kobayashi didn't really work out. Ideguchi didn't really work out.
Ideguchi, that's right.
Interestingly, the two lads in recent times more defensively minded. Mm-hmm. So I got something to do with, you know, if you think of Nakamura, Kyogo, Maeda, Hatate, it's based on speed, creativity, and going forward. Yeah. Whereas the guys who haven't really hit the ground runs, a defensive midfield player and a centre half.
That's interesting now.
So I don't know whether has it got something to do with the dynamic of the football here or whatever. I don't know. But
the other thing as well, going back to Austin Trusty just for a second, is that, look, people are very quick to denigrate and slag off the standard of Scottish football. And I get that. There's no money in Scottish football and what have you. But look, I don't care who you are. I don't care what level you played at. So many players going to places like Dens Park, like Dingwall on a Wednesday night. You've got Simon Murray running at you, and you've got, you know, these big 6'4" centre halves just throwing themselves at you. Austin Trusty can be forgiven, I think, in his debut season for kind of being like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, like you say, plenty of better players have came and taken the time to get used to it. So I would agree. I think there's definitely a feeling amongst the Celtic support that maybe Trusty just isn't quite up to it. But I think he deserves a lot longer to kind of show what he's got.
And those supporters might turn out to be right in the end.
Aye.
But I'm not sure he's at that stage yet.
No, I agree.
You know, I'm not sure he's at the write-off stage yet. And to go back to your point on Liam Scales, Liam Scales has done phenomenally. For that day when he was plunged into the team against St Johnstone, and then I think the next game was a start at Ibrox. I mean, lesser-sighted Gustav Lagerbielke. So
still back at Celtic, back training this week.
And that brings up the name Mike Narowski as well.
True, I know. Narowski actually has won every time I see him play. I think he's all right.
Yeah, another one. The robustness is obviously an issue there, to use one of Brendan's words.
Aye.
No, he doesn't. There has been issues in the injury front there, and I think it was actually this week, a year ago, I can remember being at Somerset Park when Celtic played their first pre-season game.
To open up Ayers Stadium, wasn't it?
Mike Narowski got a chance to start, and I think it was about 20 minutes.
You're right.
Off injured.
You're right.
When that opportunity was handed there at the start, and that is the first thing that happens, it's no good.
Aye. I wanted to finish, Swanee, by talking about something that I hope it's not coming up every week in the Celtic podcast, because
for me.
Aside from that, Brendan Rodgers' future, because as we sit here, we're recording this on Monday, the 30th of June, we go into the last year of his Celtic contract tomorrow. Now, I hope, Swanee, this isn't going to develop into a kind of soap opera. He's getting asked about it every week and what have you. Personally,
I'll stop you there.
It's going to be.
Until Brendan Rodgers says, I'm signing and I'm leaving, then it is.
Well, what do you think the likelihood is of him coming out and going, look, another 2-3 year deal?
I take you back to Brendan Rodgers' statement on the pitch on the day the league was won at Tannadice. Nobody knows me except me. They think they do, but nobody does. And I think we're all guessing. Shoot me if you want. That's supposed to be my job to know these things. But I defy anybody other than Brendan Rodgers' inner circle and maybe Dermot Desmond to know exactly what Brendan Rodgers is thinking. And do we even know that he's decided yet? That's the thing. I mean, you go into the Champions League. It was clear at the end of last season and after the Champions League campaign finished last season, of course, the domestic silverware is the bread and butter. That's what it's all about. But that Champions League campaign last year excited Brendan Rodgers, I think, but it also gave him a taste for, I can take this team further.
Yeah.
And a lot's going to depend on what he gets in the door, how they settle in, can they get back into the league phase? Because everybody just, I know I'm an old man. I can remember back to Croatia, Zagreb, the first time Celtic tried the qualifiers. I can remember Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, being in these places. This is no penalty kick, whoever Celtic get. But on the proviso that they get in, what can they do? Can they take it on further? That's the type of thing that maybe Brendan Rodgers wants to see how that shakes down. But listen, I thought John Hartson at the end of last season, we went to see Big John down at his charity golf day down at Turnberry. I thought John made a very fair point, exactly what you're alluding to. The fact that this will become a saga. This will become a saga. And I suspect if you go on the old Alec Ferguson model, you can't really win by saying, at the end of the season, that's enough. I've done my 3 years and that's it. You can't win because Alec Ferguson did that and was caned for that. Was the reason why the players it didn't after that happened, all kind of derailed. They shouldn't have said that, blah, blah, blah. But Brendan Rodgers will probably want to be honest about it as well. So, yes, it's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one. And I hand on heart, I'm not sure what the state of play is. I'm really not.
What's your gut feeling? Do you think he will stay on beyond next season?
My gut feeling is pretty much as I just thought there. I think that opportunity to keep growing Celtic in Europe, Celtic can go in and really deliver again in the Champions League. And listen, people will probably accuse me of being a bit overboard there. Deliver, I mean, but getting through it, I thought in the first league phase that they'd been in was a pretty good achievement, given where they'd come from. And let's face it, it wasn't a high bar for Celtic in the Champions League in recent times. They hadn't done very well in Europe, full stop. So that was a real step forward. And if Celtic can progress on that again this season, I think would excite Brendan Rodgers to stay.
The other thing sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, go on.
I was just going to say the other thing that I think might enter his thinking, say this time next year, you know, it's completely hypothetical. But say Celtic have reached 5 in a row, 5 league titles in a row. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, you look at it and think, this holy grail of reaching 9, 10 in a row, it's only meant to come up once in a lifetime. Suddenly, I think Rodgers will look at it, right, with 60 million or whatever it is in the bank, go, do you know what? This could be another chance. I mean, because then you're starting to realistically think we could get to 7, 8, and then you're within touching distance. Yeah. I think that might really appeal to him. I think he'll never admit it. It must play in his mind, walking out in the chance to potentially win 10 before. I think if he gets another even glance at it, he'll be very tempted to stay. Yeah,
it's a very it would be hugely tempting, I'm sure, just to have that. No matter what anybody says, and no matter how anybody wants to play it down, Brendan Rodgers is a Celtic man, and to have your name etched in that, in folklore, it'll be in there anyway for what he's done. Really, for doing something incredible, I'm sure it would appeal. Why would it not appeal? But again, listen, I feel terrible saying this because by saying this, you think, well, what's the point in having a podcast? But actually sitting talking about somebody who tells you, you don't know what I'm thinking, I almost feel kind of false. So just going to leave it at that.
Before we finish then, Sonny, you mentioned there the Champions League qualifiers. Celtic will have one in a few weeks' time. Yeah. Are you hopeful that it will be far-flung? would you like to be sent back to Kazakhstan or? I mean, who are the teams that have even played? Astana was in Kazakhstan.
Some of the places, honestly, some of the places in the Champions League qualifiers, when you think back, have been unbelievable. I mean, I think 2 visits to Astana. One that sticks in the memory is Brendan Rodgers' first time when he got to the group stages. The second leg against Hapoel Beersheva was just an unbelievable night of. It's just ridiculous. It must have been about 260 degrees in that stadium, it felt like, and it was Celtic were getting piled on, and you think to the incredible night that they had in Amsterdam, and they hadn't done much in Europe really for a while, and then they go to the Amsterdam Arena and Daily Record's on Chris Sutton.
That's true.
Things to talk about now and again. And back then we kindly remind Sutty that the following year he stuck one by the post with a minute to go in Basel and Celtic got knocked out. So I mean, it's so fraught that you just never know what you're going to get. But some of the far-flung destinations, and it's exciting stuff. I don't know. Obviously, the seeding I would imagine that Celtic are going to get is, I think they've got it. Am I right there? It's going to help, but there's been circumstances in the past, I think, where they've gone in against opposition where they were tipped to get it done and didn't. So I don't think anybody can take anything for granted. And to go back to Chris, I think he made a really good point in his column on Saturday. Celtic have to be tooled up for this. I can remember Celtic, Tom Rogic playing up front against Rosenborg. One time as Celtic are scrambling through. Colo Touré's been parachuted into the squad for that.
Remember Near Beaton used to get drafted in at centre half every year.
Near Beaton's annual ticket to be a central defender. Owen O'Connell in Astana. When Virgil van Dijk's just signed. I mean, it's you need to be ready. You need to be ready. And Celtic will know this. You're not telling the Celtic hierarchy anything they don't know. They know the importance of being in the Champions League. I don't think for a second they're going to leave the manager short. Put it that way. Short, maybe the wrong word. Because let me ask you this, Daniel. With the squad as it is just now, would you bank on them getting through a Champions League qualifier?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, I think most people would. I don't want to answer it for you. I would bank to get through it, but do you think that they maybe need more still?
I suppose I'm thinking in my head more for a Champions League campaign generally, definitely.
Yeah.
But in a qualifying round, they've still got the same team. I would back them to get through.
And the one thing also, Daniel, that's interesting, again, we've talked about this in podcasts before, to get your top targets, you sometimes have to wait, obviously, because there's a domino effect. Who wants this one, that one, and that's what it works. The one thing that Celtic have had in the past couple of seasons or 2-3 seasons, they've been able to go to targets now and say, we're in the Champions League. Which is a massive thing for players, because without being detrimental to the Scottish League, you touched on it yourself, everybody's going to look at their options on the table and go, I fancy the Scottish Premier League, really? Do I want that night at Dundee? Do I want that? Or can I maybe go somewhere else where the weather's a bit nicer, or blah, blah, blah? And one of the big carrots is Champions League football. That's what Celtic are able to bank on. And they're back in that position where they can't say that to a signing just now. You can't say it to them because you're not in it.
Right.
At this stage. So, and we've seen this happen down the years, and it's the chicken and the egg. It's the catch-22. The guys you want to get in to get you through the qualifiers, you can't get them in because they won't come till you've qualified.
Right.
It's like, and to go for things like, sorry if I'm dragging this on, if I'm not meant to.
No, not at all.
Talking about in terms of potential outgoings and the likes of a Nicholas Kuhn, for example. I saw this happening with Virgil van Dijk and guys like that. These guys are told these qualifiers are everything. Need to get through these qualifiers. Once that's done, then you can go.
Aye.
Think it happened with Fraser Forster, Virgil van Dijk. These guys, you wait. And then once it's done, the last sort of 4 days between the qualifiers being over, I think maybe August 28 or something like that, and September 1, you've got like frantic 3 days where Celtic will know whether they're a Champions League team in the new league phase or whether they're not. And that could be the difference between getting that 11, 12 million pound player that they're looking at. That could be the difference between that. So that's what I would say with people maybe wondering about the players that are coming in and who's not coming in at this stage. I think that might have a big thing to do with it. I could be wrong.
No,
someone being wheeled out tomorrow for 50 million quid.
I know. No, I've got a feeling that you're definitely right. Well, look, whatever happens with Celtic between now and then, we'll be here to cover it on the Record Celtic podcast. Swanee, I've missed the Celtic podcast. It's good to have it back, and it's lovely for you to join me. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
No bother. We'll speak many times through the season, I'm sure.
I'm sure we will. Thanks very much for listening. We'll be back next Monday. Hope you can join us then. Cheers.